You know it's this. Take a perk and a talk of that shit. Money swallowing like sis. Did it perfect in the kid. Got a billion who sang on my head. Look up better put on the road I just spent. I know we got $1 million. The devil that shit ain't not cheaper again.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to MangaMuse. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 7th part of What If Naruto Enters K-Pop Demon Hunters. Special note, this fanfic is written and a masterpiece of Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. The crowd leaned forward, murmurs rippling. Silk resonance wasn't rare, but to see it drawn out with such control and from an aburame, no less was startling. Kankuro snarled and snapped a command. His spear machine lurched forward, its serrated prongs slashing down at Shino with piston-fueled strength. But every strike was met not with steel, but with threads. Shino's silk coiled tighter with every motion, wrapping the machine's limbs, binding it joint by joint. The spearhead hissed and whirred, but the more it struggled, the deeper it sank into the web. Then Shino braced his stance, every movement calm, precise. He gave one sharp pull. The machine screeched as the silk cinched, and with a flex of his arms, Shino yanked, dragging the entire construct off balance. With a twist, he swung his spear and flung the bound machine bodily through the air. It crashed toward Kankuro, who cursed and threw himself sideways, rolling hard as his prized weapon shattered against the stone. Metal fragments skittered across the arena floor. The crowd erupted, roaring so loud it drowned even the proctor's shout. Up in the stands, the Jonin leaned forward. Kurenai's lips curved in quiet pride. "That's my student," she whispered. Methodical. Patient. He waited until the machine overextended and then trapped it. Asuma chuckled, smoke curling from the side of his mouth. "Kid's colder than I thought." Didn't flinch once. Just reeled him in like a fisherman. Guy's eyebrows shot up as he pumped a fist. Yash. Such DSPLN. His silk binds the heart of the enemy as tightly as the body. Even Kakashi let out a low whistle behind his mask. Smart. He didn't just stop the weapon. He made Kankuro dodge his own toy. Efficient. I'd almost say clinical. In the box above, one official leaned forward, astonished. "He's weaponized silk like a WHP, like a snare. That's no passive resonance. That's predatory." Hiruzen's eyes narrowed, pride flickering in their depths. The aburame rarely wield their gift like this. But when they do, it's absolute control. Back in the finalists' room, Naruto whistled low. Guess bugs weren't the only scary thing about that guy. Sasuke's lips curved into the faintest of smirks. Calculated. Efficient. I like it. Sakura nodded, watching Shino's calm expression as the crowd roared his name. That's not luck. That's years of patience. Shino said nothing as he reset his stance, the threads around his spear still gleaming in the light. Silent, steady like the spider in the web. Kankuro tapped his foot, and with a sudden hiss the mechanism on his back roared to life. A burst of flame spat from hidden boosters, propelling him forward in a blur. He snapped his wrist, and with a sharp clang a compact contraption on his arm extended into a short naginata, the blade gleaming as he spun it easily into guard. The crowd gasped at the speed of it, murmurs swelling through the stands. Shino answered with silence. His resonance poured out in threads of pale silk that trailed from his spear like the first strands of a web. Each step he took was deliberate, the silk winding into the dirt, into the air, weaving patterns too subtle to see until it was already too late. Up in the box, an official leaned forward, eyes fixed on Kankuro's weapon. "That isn't ordinary steel," he muttered. "That's specialized alloy demon-slaying grade. To forge something like that the cost must have been immense." Another official nodded. Expensive, yes, but effective. If sand smiths can mass-produce that, they'll be arming their hunters with weapons leagues ahead of the others. Hiruzen puffed on his pipe, his gaze steady. Innovation is dangerous in the wrong hands. But the Aburame they weave victories quietly. Don't underestimate him. Raza sat back, pride plain on his face. At last, he said, smugness lacing his words, my son shows his true brilliance for the world to see. Below, Kankuro launched forward again, boosters flaring, his naginata a blur. But the threads around Shino tightened with every step, every clash. The spider was already weaving, patient and precise. Kankuro snarled as the silk closed around his ankles. With a burst of flame from his boosters he ripped himself free, landing light on his feet. He tapped a valve on the naginatas and a hiss filled the air, sleeping toxin venting out in a gray, suffocating cloud. The crowd gasped as the haze spread, hunters in the stands covering their mouths instinctively. But it was already too late. The web had been spun long before, threads anchored to the ground, the air, the naginata itself. Shino tugged once with his spear, and the silk tightened with a vicious snap. Kankuro was yanked mid-stride, his boosters flaring uselessly as the strands pulled him from the air and slammed him into the arena floor with bone-shaking force. The naginata clattered from his hand. His body twitched once, then stilled. Unconscious. Shino stood swaying, his spear still braced against the dirt. The cloud of toxin drifted over him, and he coughed once, his legs wobbling. His chest heaved, his eyes narrowing under the strain, but he didn't fall. He drove the spear point down, using it to steady himself as the proctor rushed in, checking Kankuro before raising a hand. Winner, Aburame Shino. The crowd erupted. Some in awe at Kankuro's ingenuity, others whispering about Shino's eerie patience. Up in the box, Hiruzen's eyes softened. Like a spider, he murmured. Silent. Patient. Deadly. Raza's hands tightened on the railing. His pride at Kankuro's craft had soured into silent fury as the boy lay unconscious, undone not by strength but by a web too subtle to escape. Zoe leaned forward in the stands, eyes wide from Shino's victory. Could we do that? Wrap someone up with resonance like he did? That was insane. Celine shook her head gently, her tone calm but resolute. No, not like that. We're sealers. Our gift is different. The Han Moon gave us the power to bind Jiraiya and his kind away, locking them where they can't touch this world. That's not weakness. That's balance. The girls stilled at her words. Myra's brows furrowed, thoughtful. Rumi glanced down at her sleeve, fingers brushing unconsciously at her hidden markings. Zoe slumped for a moment, pouting but not in defeat. Celine went on, her voice firmer. Hunters channel soul resonance into weapons, reflexes, overwhelming force. Sealers channel it into wards and lock strong enough to cage the very worst of demons. Hunters fight the enemy in front of them. Sealers stop the enemy that would swallow the world whole. Both matter. Mira nodded slowly, as if reminding herself aloud. So it's not that we're weaker. Just different. Exactly, Celine said. Without hunters, demons would overrun every town. Without sealers, Jiraiya and his kind would be walking free again. We carry the weight together. The crowd above still roared for Shino's silk resonance, chanting his name, but in the quiet corner where Celine and the girls sat, the weight of her words lingered an anchor against envy. The crowd above still roared for Shino's silk resonance, chanting his name, but in the box seat where the Hokage, Kazekage, and foreign officials sat, the reaction was cooler, calculating. One American representative leaned forward, eyes sharp. Two prodigies in one fight. The Aburame boy mastering silk like that and the Sans boy with his engineered contraptions. Remarkable. A Russian counterpart nodded, adjusting his tie. That kind of technical innovation doesn't come cheap. The boosters, the toxin release, the alloy work it's all special steel. Costs a fortune. Raza, the Kazakage, folded his arms and allowed the faintest smirk. An investment worth every coin. My son finally shines. Hiruzen gave a diplomatic nod, though his eyes flicked briefly toward Naruto in the waiting room feed. Yes. The San's ingenuity is impressive. It will secure them more funding, no doubt. And as for Konoha, our prodigies are only just beginning to show their light. The crowd cheered louder still, split between awe for Shino's precision and intrigue at Kankuro's machinery, while in the quieter rows below, Celine's words anchored her girls, keeping them from drowning in comparison. The crowd was still buzzing from the clash of silk and steel when the proctor's voice rang out again, sharp over the speakers. Next match. Sakura Haruno vs Temari of the Sand. The arena floor shifted as the platforms lowered and then rose again, carrying the two girls into the light. The crowd hushed at the sight, two very different figures facing each other. Sakura stepped forward with her shoulders square, blade at her peach, her pink hair catching the sunlight. Her expression was calm, steady, the kind of composure only earned by clawing her way through fear and BLD in the hollow. Across from her, Temari lifted her war fan in one hand, her smirk cool and confident. She didn't need words to make her presence clear. The 3 stars painted across the fan told everyone she was ready to unleash soul resonance, not tricks. Up in the stands, Zoe leaned forward on the edge of her seat. Sakura's tough, but that Temari girl feels dangerous. Mira, quiet beside her, muttered, dangerous is one way to put it. That fan isn't just for show, it channels wind resonance. If she unleashes it full force. Rumi's eyes were fixed on Sakura, lips pressed tight. She won't back down. Not Sakura. Down on the floor, the tension thickened. Temari tapped her fan against her shoulder, eyes narrowed in appraisal. You don't look like much. Let's see if you can last. Sakura's grip tightened on her sword, but her voice was steady. I don't plan on losing. The proctor raised his arm. Begin. The crowd roared, the fan snapped open, and Sakura surged forward, steel against storm. Sakura got into willow stance. She knew Temari underestimated her hell, probably half the audience did. No clan. No fancy soul resonance. Just a civilian orphan. No legacy. She gritted her teeth, flashing back to the night a demon tore through her home, killing her parents and sister. That night she had sworn, never again. She would be the shield, the willow tree that bent but never broke. If she died, it would be on the battlefield, protecting the battered and innocent. Her team believed in her. She believed in herself. No wind would uproot her. Temari smirked, opening her fan. Let's see if you can even stand. She swung, and a massive wave of wind barreled forward. Dust whipped across the arena, banners in the stands snapping and tearing under the force. But Sakura didn't falter. She rooted herself to the ground, her stance like deep roots, her body unmoving even as the gale slammed into her. The crowd gasped. Someone in the stands shouted, "She's still standing." Temari's eyes narrowed. "TCH, fine, try this." She snapped open the second moon of her fan. The gust that followed howled like a hurricane, strong enough to topple small houses. This time Sakura was lifted and thrown, her body twisting through the air only to land hard, roll, and come up still charging. The crowd erupted in cheers and disbelief. "No way," one hunter yelled. "She should be broken in half," another shouted. "Look at her go." Mira was on her feet, clapping and hollering. Zoe cupped her hands around her mouth, screaming, "Don't you dare stop, Sakura." Rumi didn't cheer, but her lips twitched into the faintest, proudest smile. Up in the box, one of the foreign officials leaned forward in disbelief. "Impossible. That wind should have crushed her." Hiruzen's face softened, pride clear in his eyes. "That's Sakura Haruno. She was never given anything, but she's carved herself into steel all the same." Temari grit her teeth, panic flickering as her smirk faltered. She snapped her fan open to the third moon, wind shrieking as the air itself became a wall of pressure. The gust screamed towards Sakura with force to rip trees from the ground. But Sakura didn't slow. She slammed her sword into the ground mid-charge, bracing her body against it. The wind ripped her hair back, tore at her clothes, clawed at her skin, but she pressed forward one step at a time, her arms straining, muscles burning, jaw clenched tight. "Move, DMNU," she hissed. The willow bent, but it didn't break. Gasps echoed through the arena. A hunter in the crowd shouted, "She's walking through a storm that could kill a man." Another screamed, "That girl's a monster." And then Sakura wrenched her sword free, the crowd on its feet, and surged forward straight at Temari. The arena exploded with cheers. Temari hurled wind blast after wind blast, her fan snapping open and shut, currents shrieking as they carved through the arena. Sakura weaved and dodged, each step dragging her closer, her hair whipping in the gale, her eyes burning with resolve. Temari's smirk cracked. Panic surged. She's not stopping. With a snarl she poured her soul resonance into the fan, the wind edge sharpening into invisible blades honed to kill. She swung, the air itself slicing towards Sakura with lethal intent. Up in the stands, gasps rippled. Hiruzen and Raza both surged to their feet, their faces hard. That kind of strike wasn't meant for an exam. It was murder. They were ready to intervene, ready to stop it. But then it happened. An aura burst from Sakura, towering behind her. The image of a great tree, massive and unyielding, its branches stretching wide like a guardian. The ground beneath her feet rumbled, cracked, and with a roar, a thick earth wall surged upward in front of her. Roots twisted through the stone, living and breathing, bracing against the cutting wind. The gust slammed into the wall and broke, shards of air scattering harmlessly around her. The crowd froze. Silence. Then gasps exploded through the stands. "That's," one hunter choked. "That's Mokutan." Officials from the foreign villages leaned forward in disbelief, their faces pale. Impossible. Hashirama's essence was lost, sealed away, forgotten. No one has manifested it in centuries. Yet here it was, alive again, in the body of a civilian girl with no senju name. On the balcony, Hiruzen's throat worked as he wiped at the corner of his eye. "The will of fire still burns," he whispered hoarsely. In the stands, Kakashi's single eye shone wet. He couldn't stop the pride swelling in his chest. "Sakura, you never gave up. You thought yourself useless, but you worked harder than anyone. And now the world will see you for what you truly are." Beside him, Asuma and Kurenai gaped. "What the hell are you feeding them?" Asuma barked. "First Naruto, then Sasuke, and now her. All three activating soul resonance as genin. This is insane." Kurenai shook her head, speechless, before groaning, "Dream team indeed." Guy, uncharacteristically calm, folded his arms, a rare proud smile touching his lips. "Sometimes," he said softly, "hard work really is all you need." Down below, Naruto and Sasuke were already on their feet, cheering at the top of their lungs. "Let's go, Sakura." Naruto's voice cracked, but he didn't care. Sasuke smirked, eyes gleaming. Knew she had it in her. In the finalist room, Shino's usual calm cracked, his eyes widening. Even Gaara, who hadn't reacted to anything so far, raised his head and stared at the arena, his expression unreadable. This wasn't just another match. This was a revelation. Sakura Haruno, no clan, no legacy, no name, stood in the center of the arena with the roots of an ancient legend rising at her back. And the entire world knew they were watching something extraordinary. The arena shook as Sakura's roots tore through the wall she had summoned, whipping forward like living chains. Temari gasped, her fan flaring open, but before she could swing again the roots coiled around her arms and legs. The ironwood grip was merciless, squeezing tight, dragging her to her knees. Temari strained, teeth gritted, trying to push her resonance into the fan, but the roots pulsed with a suppressive force, choking her very energy. Her fingers slipped. The great war fan fell from her hands, clattering to the ground. The crowd erupted in shouts. The proctor's eyes widened. She did it. Sakura stood tall, sweat streaming down her face, chest heaving. She nodded once, firm, resolute, unbroken. And then her body gave out. She collapsed, hitting the stone floor even as the roots around Temari dissolved into dust. The proctor rushed forward, checking both girls. Temari was still conscious, weak but alive. Sakura lay limp, completely spent, but the faintest of smiles curved her lips. The proctor straightened, raising his hand. Double knockout, he declared, voice carrying over the roaring crowd. The stands exploded into cheers anyway. Hunters and civilians alike leapt to their feet, their voices shaking the walls of the great arena. They hadn't just watched a fight. They had witnessed history. Medics hurried in, carting both Temari and Sakura onto stretchers. Temari's dazed glare flickered with something like respect. Sakura, unconscious, still smiled as though she'd finally proven what she always believed deep down, that she belonged. In the box seats, officials murmured with open admiration. Not one blamed Temari for the killing strike earlier. Everyone knew it had been instinct in the heat of battle. Raza exhaled in quiet relief, his daughter alive, still a credit to the sand. But all eyes kept returning to Sakura Haruno. Clanless. Orphaned. The girl who stood against the wind. Even without the win, one truth was certain: she had more than earned her place among the Chunin. The arena was chaos, the crowd on their feet, voices crashing like a wave that refused to stop. Medics carted Sakura and Temari away, but the roar only grew louder. Up in the stands, Rumi, Mira, and Zoe were screaming themselves hoarse. Zoe nearly fell over the railing with how hard she leaned forward, Mira clapped until her palms stung, and even Rumi, usually quiet and composed, was flushed, shouting Sakura's name like she'd been holding it in for years. And then there was Celine. Calm, collected Celine, who almost never let her emotions show. She was on her feet too, applauding with pride shining plain in her eyes. The girls froze mid-cheer, staring at her in shock. You're cheering? Zoe gawked. Celine only smiled faintly, eyes still on the field where the roots had torn stone apart. She earned it. Rumi sank back down into her seat, heart pounding. She whispered, barely loud enough for Mira to hear, "Sakura, you were amazing." The crowd roared again, shaking the very stands, and for once everyone inside was united in awe. The arena was still buzzing from Sakura's unexpected resonance and the shocking double knockout. The proctor stepped forward, his voice amplified through the speakers, steadying the chaos with the words everyone had been waiting for. The preliminary round is complete. For remain. The semi-final matches will now be decided. The great screen above the arena flickered, names appearing one by one in bold script. First, Naruto Uzumaki vs. Gaara of the Sand. The crowd erupted instantly, half in anticipation, half in unease. Two prodigies, two storms in human form. Gasps and murmurs rolled through the stands, hunters and officials leaning forward. Raza sat up straighter in his seat, eyes narrowing, while Hiruzen folded his hands with a proud but worried look. Naruto stood tall, rolling his shoulders, confidence radiating off him. He felt the cheers, but his eyes found the calm, pale boy in the corner. Gaara didn't even look up from the music still playing in his ears, expression unreadable. Naruto smirked anyway. Guess it's just you and me then. Second, Sasuke Uchiha vs. Shino Aburame. This announcement drew a different kind of roar, excited but tense. Two calm, calculating hunters, one burning with fire and vengeance, the other cold and precise like a spider's patience. It was a clash everyone wanted to see. Sasuke's lips quirked in the faintest smirk. His Sharingan shimmered briefly, as if to remind everyone that the Uchiha legacy was far from dead. He glanced toward Shino, measuring him already. Shino didn't smirk. He didn't blink. His spear rested against his shoulder, silk still faintly humming around his hands, and he simply adjusted his glasses. His silence was answer enough. Up in the stands, Mira elbowed Zoe, whispering excitedly, "That's gonna be insane. Spider vs. Phoenix." Zoe squealed, "I can't wait." Rumi's eyes, though, were only on Naruto, her heart tightening with both pride and worry. The proctor let the noise settle before speaking again. "These are the final four. Rest, regain your strength, and prepare. The semi-finals begin tomorrow." The crowd roared its approval, the air trembling with anticipation of what was to come. Sakura was laid out on the hospital bed, pale but smiling faintly as her teammates flanked her. Naruto sat at the edge of the mattress, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, while Sasuke stood nearby, arms crossed but eyes soft. They'd been filling her in on everything. She'd missed the crowd's reaction, the officials' words, even the way the other finalists were sizing each other up. Kakashi slipped in quietly, hands in his pockets, his visible eye crinkling as he watched his students chatter. "You three are impossible," he murmured, though the warmth in his tone betrayed how proud he was. Just then, a knock echoed on the door. Before anyone could answer, it swung open, and in came Jiraiya, Celine, and the girls. Zoe barreled in first with her usual excitement. "You were amazing, Sakura," she cried, nearly tripping over herself as she rushed to the bedside. Mira followed, more composed, but her eyes were still bright with admiration. Rumi lingered by the doorway, her gaze sweeping the room until it inevitably landed on Naruto. Then, Mira's expression shifted, narrowing into a glare as she turned on Sasuke. She marched up and punched him in the arm, not too hard, but enough to make a point. "You idiot! Naming a technique after me in front of the entire world." Her cheeks were crimson, her voice trembling with mortified outrage. Sasuke didn't even flinch. He just gave her a small, knowing smile, the kind that carried more warmth than words. "I'm not sorry." The room froze for a beat, and Mira's blush deepened. She opened her mouth, then shut it, then without warning leaned in and kissed him, quick but certain. Zoe squealed so loudly the nurses down the hall probably heard. "Oh my God, Mira. You actually..." Sakura groaned from the bed, covering her face with her hand. "Get a room." Naruto threw his head back dramatically. "Seriously? We're right here." Kakashi sighed, though his shoulders shook with suppressed laughter. Jiraiya cackled outright, clutching his stomach, while Celine just smiled knowingly, like she'd been expecting this from the start. The awkwardness melted into laughter, the kind that made the room feel less like a hospital and more like home. For the first time all day, even Sakura's tired smile brightened into something real. The laughter eventually quieted, though a few chuckles still slipped out every now and then. Mira had her face buried in her hands, half furious at herself and half glowing, while Sasuke just leaned against the wall looking smug in that subtle way only he could pull off. Naruto was still shaking his head in disbelief. Unbelievable. 1 month away and suddenly I don't even know you people anymore. Zoe plopped down in a chair, swinging her legs and grinning ear to ear. "Oh, you know us. You just didn't notice how obvious it was." Sakura groaned again, but her eyes softened as she looked at all of them. Even sore, stitched up, and confined to a hospital bed, she couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so surrounded. So safe. Kakashi leaned in the corner, mask tugged just a little higher like he was hiding more than his face. He watched them, Naruto bickering, Sasuke quietly content, Sakura smiling despite herself, and the girls fitting right in as if they'd been there from the start. His chest ached in a way it hadn't in years. These weren't just students anymore. They were his kids. Broken, reckless, stubborn but his, all the same. Jiraiya caught his eye and smirked knowingly. "Looks like you've got yourself a family, Kakashi." Kakashi didn't answer, but the glance he sent toward the bed said everything. Celine stood near the door, hands folded, watching too. When she first promised to look after Naruto, she thought she was keeping a fragile boy from falling apart. But now she saw something different. These bonds had changed him. Not just him, all of them. They weren't just teammates anymore. They were threads of the same tapestry, stitched together by battle, laughter, and loss. A family forged by fire. Rumi sat quietly in a chair by the window, her eyes drawn to Naruto more often than not. He must have felt it, because when he glanced her way, their eyes met. For a moment, the noise of the room dulled. She thought of the fountain, of the kiss that still burned on her lips. He thought of her hand brushing his, the way she'd seen all his scars and hadn't turned away. Neither of them said a word. But their smiles, soft, hesitant, private, were enough. The room settled into a warm rhythm after that. Zoe chattered on about the matches, Mira teased Sakura for her dramatic hero moment, Jiraiya cracked jokes at Kakashi's expense, and Celine let herself laugh with them. For one night, at least, the war outside the walls didn't matter. Inside, they were just kids, together, alive. And that was everything. As the room buzzed with laughter and light-hearted teasing, Naruto sat a little straighter. His gaze slid toward Rumi again, drawn like a tide he couldn't fight. She was still by the window, her dark hair catching the lamplight, her smile quiet but genuine as she watched everyone else. For a heartbeat, Naruto hesitated, his chest tightening, his palms damp. He'd fought demons, bled in the hollow, stared Orochimaru in the eye. But this felt harder. Still, he reached. Slowly, awkwardly, he stretched his hand across the narrow gap between them and brushed her fingers with his. Rumi blinked, startled, her breath catching, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her palm and let their hands weave together, her grip warm and firm. Naruto felt something ease in his chest, something that had been wound tight for years. The scars, the patterns, the weight of his past, it all quieted. Just for now, it was enough to feel her hand in his, grounding him. Rumi's cheeks warmed, but she didn't look away. She squeezed back, silently telling him what words couldn't, "You're not alone." Across the room, Zoe noticed first. Her grin spread mischievously, but for once she kept quiet, nudging Mira instead. Mira followed her gaze, and though she smirked, she also softened. "About time," she murmured under her breath. Naruto didn't even care if anyone saw. For the first time in forever, holding her hand felt like victory enough. They left the laughter and the murmur of the ward behind, climbing the narrow stair to the roof where the air felt different, thinner, colder, touched by the distant sound of the forest and the city breathing below. Street lamps smeared the horizon in a soft gold, the Hokage Tower's silhouette stood dark against a bowl of stars. From somewhere far off a cart rattled, a dog barked twice, and the soft, patient chorus of crickets threaded through the wind. The city slept around them, and on the roof the three of them sat with that hush between old soldiers and tired parents. Jiraiya was already there, legs swinging over the edge, jacket open to the night. When Celine and Kakashi reached him, he made no move to stand, he only exhaled like a man trying to empty himself of a bad dream. "They've grown up, haven't they?" he said at last, voice small against the night. Celine paused in the doorway, the warm light from below peeling across her face. She could have laughed off the sentiment, she was used to guarding her feelings, but something in the way Jiraiya sat made it too fragile for jokes. "Yes," she answered simply. "They have." Kakashi dropped down beside them, mask up enough that his visible eye creased at the edges. The roof tiles were still warm from daytime, a faint smell of smoke and city food rode the breeze. "Amazing kids," he murmured. "Even with the burdens and God, they have burdens, they keep smiling. They're becoming real hunters." Jiraiya turned his head, the humor stripping out of his face until it was only a hard line. "I'm afraid there's more burdens to come," he said, the words like a stone into still water. "At least for Naruto." Celine's posture tightened. "What do you mean, Jiraiya?" Kakashi rose before Jiraiya finished, the muscle of his jaw working. What are you not telling us? Jiraiya stood slowly, and when he spoke it was as if the night bent toward him to listen. When Orochimaru marked Naruto it wasn't on a whim. I've received reliable word that a group Orochimaru is a part of has taken an interest in him. More specifically, they want his soul resonance. Kakashi's eye narrowed until the moonlight caught on the silvered lashes. Why him? Sure, it's powerful, but it's not just a legacy. He let the sentence die as Jiraiya's face went flat. It's more than whirlpool and storm, Jiraiya said. There's something braided into his resonance. When those currents collide it can escalate. In the old texts they called it a chaos incarnation. Unchecked, it's not just destructive, it's ravenous. It could level whole districts. They want it. They want to take it from him. Celine's hand went to her mouth for the briefest second. You mean take his soul? Exactly. Jiraiya's voice was steady and terrible in its calm. They don't want a child, they want the thing he carries. And they aren't amateurs. Each member of that group is S-class nuke-neen, vicious and patient. They move like predators with a plan. Kakashi's answer was a low, dangerous sound. They'll have to take it from my dead body. Jiraiya let a humorless laugh loose, the sound swallowed by the wind. They'll try anyway. The attack that took his parents? Not random. They were after him even then. Orochimaru carved those whisker marks into him as a message. I arrived in time to stop worse, but the pattern's never been about random cruelty. It's been about prize-taking. The night seemed to lean in a distant horn, the rustle of pine, the soft hum of the city. Celine's fingers tightened into her palm, the outline of her knuckles white under the rooftop light. He's still a child, she said, but the words were steady. He doesn't need to face more of that. He won't face it alone, Kakashi said, and though he kept his tone controlled there was iron in it. Wherever he goes, I go. If they come, he isn't alone. Jiraiya's face softened, just a fraction, and he nodded. Then his voice dropped to a level that left no room for bluster. Keep this locked down. Don't repeat it. Don't tell the kids or anyone outside this roof. If word gets loose, it becomes bait. If they hear we're whispering, he let the threat hang, unspoken and heavy. This never get repeated. Understand? Or I will kill you. Jiraiya's face softens, almost imperceptibly, then his voice drops to something that leaves no room for bravado. Keep this locked down. Don't tell the kids or anyone outside this roof. If word leaks, it becomes bait. If they hear we're whispering, he lets the threat hang, heavy and unadorned. This never gets repeated. Understand? Or I will kill you. Silence swells until it feels like part of the roof itself. Then Jiraiya adds, quieter still, I'm taking him for training. 5 years. We'll be on the move. We'll teach him to hold what he carries. Celine gasps, the sound a small, sharp thing. You're taking him now. Panic and the timetable for Rumi's confession flash behind her eyes, the exam, the plans, a life suddenly rearranged. Jiraiya answers with the same calm that makes his danger more terrifying. I'll give him a day after the exams. No more. He needs to be trained and kept safe. The three of them look out over the sleeping city. Somewhere below, a child laughs in his sleep. Up here, under the indifferent stars, the roof feels simultaneously like a fortress and a thin ledge. They are deciding, in a few measured words, to steal an ordinary life and trade it for a road that will be long and sharp and necessary. They slept, though excitement rattled their dreams. By dawn the village was already alive, sunlight spilling over rooftops, banners strung across the streets like ribbons. The air smelled of sweet bread, grilled meat, and dust rising from the crowd pouring toward the arena. Today wasn't just another day, it was the day of the finals. Naruto shot upright before the light even reached the windows, grinning like a boy about to leap into legend. Sasuke rose quieter, composed as always, though the way he tied his sash was just a little sharper than usual. When they left together, walking shoulder to shoulder, it was with the kind of pride that made passers-by turn and stare. Sakura lingered, cheeks pink with nerves. Kakashi appeared at her side, calm as ever, and together they made their way toward the stands. Sakura's heart raced. She could already hear the swell of cheers rolling across the village. The arena was transformed. Flags snapped in the breeze, drums echoed, and the crowd roared in waves. Families perched in the stands, children waved little paper fans painted with clan symbols, and merchants shouted above the din as they sold food and trinkets. From the highest tier the sunlight gleamed off the Hokage's balcony, a reminder of just how far the genin below had come. Naruto and Sasuke stepped into the finalists' room beneath that roar, their shadows stretching long in the morning light. Sakura, watching from above, pressed her hands to her chest. This wasn't dread. This was pride, seeing her teammates, her friends, step forward into the future they'd fought so hard to reach. The proctor raised his hand, the crowd hushed, and then the announcement carried across the arena: the Chunin exams finals had begun. The cheer that followed shook the very stones of the village. The proctor strode to the center of the arena, shoulders squared, the sun glinting off his vest. He raised a hand, and the noise of the crowd tightened into eager silence, anticipation buzzing in the air like the hum before a storm. His voice rang out, steady and sharp. The first match: Uzumaki Naruto vs Sabaka no Gaara. The arena exploded with cheers. Villagers clapped, stamped their feet, and called the names of both boys. Naruto grinned wide, soaking it in, pumping a fist into the air as the crowd roared back at him. His energy was contagious, spilling out of him in every bounce and restless shift of his stance. Across the ring, Gaara emerged, the sunlight catching the pale curve of his face, the shadows under his eyes making his expression sharper. He moved with quiet confidence, not hurried, not sluggish, but with the weight of someone who knew eyes were on him and didn't care. And yet, in the way he tilted his head, in the way his gaze locked on Naruto, there was something fierce, almost magnetic. Emo, yes, with the stillness of someone who kept his world inside, but vibrant too, like a storm held tight in a glass. The crowd answered his entrance differently than Naruto's, less rowdy, more curious, more drawn in. Where Naruto sparked noise, Gaara drew a hush, a lean forward, as if everyone wanted to see what was behind those tired green eyes. Up in the stands, Sakura leaned against the railing, pulse racing. Kakashi stood beside her, calm, one hand in his pocket, his eye fixed on the two boys below. The proctor's hand dropped. Begin. Naruto pulled at the bit blades, humming as soul resonance whipped around him, gathering like a storm caught in a whirlpool. Dust curled at his feet, his stance sharp, ready. The crowd roared at the sight, fists pumping, voices rising. Across from him, Gaara reached behind his gourd and, without hurry, drew out a book. He cracked it open mid-arena, pale eyes dropping to the page like the crowd didn't exist. The golden title caught the sun. Twilight. A ripple of confusion ran through the stands, then the collective sweat drop moment hit. Wait. Is he seriously? Yeah. He's reading Twilight. The girls in the crowd leaned in, whispering, blushing behind their hands. He's so intense. I bet he's Team Edward. No, look at him, totally Team Jacob. Up on the balcony, Raza exhaled long through his nose, rubbing his forehead. A sigh. Then a muttered, only my kid. Naruto's jaw dropped, blades sagging in disbelief. Are you serious right now? This is the finals. Not book club. Gaara didn't look up. He turned the page with slow, deliberate care, every motion a kind of insult. Naruto groaned, dragging a hand down his face. The crowd howled with laughter. Finally he dropped his arms with a dramatic sigh. Fine. If you fight me, I'll get you the sequel. Mira let me borrow it. That made Gaara pause. His eyes lifted, green and shadowed, meeting Naruto's with sudden focus. The arena hushed. For a moment, the book hung half closed in his hands. And then at last he tucked it away. The proctor's lips twitched. Match begin. The crowd hadn't stopped buzzing from Naruto's outburst. When he finally sighed and muttered, "Fine. If you fight me, I'll get you the sequel. Mira, let me borrow it." The words carried just far enough. Every head in the rows of girls turned at once. "Mira?" He said. "Mira? Wait, does she have the sequel?" 100 curious eyes locked onto her in the stands. Mira stiffened under the sudden spotlight, hands frozen on the railing. Her cheeks went pink, and she muttered, "What? I didn't think he'd announce it to the whole stadium." The girls leaned together, whispering fast and excited, half about Gaara, half about how Mira somehow had her hands on the most coveted book in circulation. Down in the arena, Gaara snapped the book shut, finally sliding it back against his gourd. His gaze flicked briefly toward the stands, toward Mira, before dropping squarely back on Naruto. His lips tugged, the smallest hint of a smirk breaking the stillness. For the first time, it looked like he was actually ready to fight. The book was gone, and Gaara's demeanor shifted. His hand lifted, and with a thought the sand at his back broke loose in a roar, erupting into the arena like a living tide. It surged forward in twisting arms, trying to close around Naruto and crush the fight before it even began. Naruto's resonance flared, the whirlpool bursting out around him. Water spun from his blades, arcing into the air before crashing down in sheets. Sand hissed as it was soaked through, clumping heavy, its speed faltering under the sudden weight. Naruto didn't waste the opening. He moved fast. Lightning sparked across his stance, soul resonance biting sharp through his muscles as he darted left, then right, weaving between the sluggish sand tendrils. The crowd roared with each near miss, the earth shaking under Gaara's pressure and Naruto's defiance. Gaara's eyes narrowed, his calm expression unchanged even as the water-drenched sand dragged behind his commands. He extended both arms, and the tide of grains rose again, higher, wider, threatening to close off every escape. Naruto grinned. "That all you got, bookworm?" He tightened his grip on the blades, the water spinning faster, lightning crawling bright over the steel. With a shout, he lunged straight into the storm. Naruto lunged, blades flashing with resonance, the whirlpool tightening as lightning sparked across the steel. He slashed through a wall of soaked sand. It split, hissing, collapsing under the weight of his momentum. For a heartbeat, it looked like he'd break clean through. Then steel rang. Naruto's strike met not sand, but metal. Gaara stood there, calm as ever, one hand still loose at his side while the other held a long, blackened cutlass. Its edge gleamed wicked under the sun, droplets of wet sand sliding down its surface. The crowd gasped, a ripple of surprise running through the arena. "So you do carry something other than a sandbox," Naruto shot back, forcing against the blade. Sparks danced where their weapons locked, water dripping from the clash. Gaara's green eyes lifted, intense but quiet. He pushed Naruto back with a twist, sand gathering at his feet again as the cutlass swept in a low, fluid arc more practiced than anyone expected. He wasn't just relying on the gourd. He was a swordsman too. Sakura's grip on the railing tightened, heart racing. "Naruto, don't get reckless." The crowd roared louder, half in shock, half in awe. This wasn't just Gaara the silent boy with the sand. This was Gaara, Blades Man, stepping forward on his own terms. Naruto grinned through the strain, exhilarated. Finally. Now this is a fight. With a burst of soul resonance, he spun his blades, water and lightning snapping together, and charged back into the clash. Naruto's water surged, wrapping him in a living current. The whirlpool spun tighter, lifting off the ground, droplets scattering like shards of glass in the sunlight. Every step he took sent waves crashing outward, forcing the sand back, keeping it heavy and sluggish. Gaara didn't flinch. His cutlass held steady, his free hand rising as the sand answered him. It swirled around his body in wide spirals, rising faster, sharper, until it became a cyclone of grit and force. The air itself seemed to grind, hissing as if the wind carried teeth. Steel clashed in the middle of it, Naruto's dual blade striking fast and relentless against Gaara's cutlass, each blow sparking, each movement powered by the elements raging at their backs. Water crashed against sand, sand pushed back against water, neither giving, each boy straining to prove the strength of his soul. The crowd was on its feet now, cheering, gasping, pointing as the arena became a storm of colliding forces. With a sudden roar, Gaara moved his cutlass into the ground. The sand leapt upward, spiraling high, shaping itself into a tornado that spun with crushing force. Dust and grit scoured the ring, the noise a thunderous howl. Naruto answered with no hesitation. He swung both blades wide, his resonance flooding into the water until it lifted from the earth entirely, a perfect whirlpool spinning in the air above him, gleaming blue in the sun. With a shout, he hurled it forward, the cyclone of water meeting the tornado of sand head-on. The clash was deafening. Sand hissed and hardened, water splintered and sprayed, the two forces grinding against each other in a storm that shook the arena to its foundations. For a moment it was impossible to see either boy, only the proof of their will made manifest in elemental fury. And then, through the chaos, their blades found each other again, cutlass against twin bits, sparks and spray flying as they forced their way through the storm to meet in the center. They kept clashing, blades ringing over the roar of their elements. Naruto's whirlpool spun high and unyielding, every surge of water gleaming like liquid steel in the sun. Gaara's sand tornado screamed in reply, grains grinding together with such force the very air shivered. When the two storms collided, it was no longer just a battle, it was a spectacle. The whirlpool and the tornado pressed into each other, water and sand folding, twisting, and exploding outward in waves that rattled the arena walls. For a heartbeat, it looked like the elements would cancel out. Then the clash deepened, resonance feeding resonance, until the collision itself became an aura, a perfect storm sphere, glowing, violent, and breathtaking. Water spiraled through sand, sand churned through water, locked in a balance so precise it was almost art. The officials in the observation box shot to their feet, their voices caught in their throats. Impossible. They've created a perfect clash. No one that age should have this level of resonance control. The crowd didn't understand the mechanics, but they felt it. Gasps and cheers rolled like thunder, the noise mixing with the roar of the storm below. The stands shook, villagers clutching at the railings, unable to look away. In the heart of it all, Naruto grinned wide, sweat flying as he forced his blades forward. Come on, Gaara. Let's see whose storm lasts longer. Gaara's cutlass gleamed through the swirling sand, his eyes shadowed but burning, a faint smirk cutting across his face. His silence spoke louder than any words, a vow that he wasn't about to break first. The aura of clashing storms swelled higher, a storm inside the arena, and for a moment even the sky seemed to dim beneath their power. The storm held in balance, water and sand locked in a perfect clash, neither yielding. The arena shook under the strain, dust raining from the upper walls as the crowd roared itself hoarse. But Naruto wasn't done. His grip tightened on the twin blades, resonance flaring hotter. The whirlpool above him shuddered, then began to spark, first a faint hiss, then a crackle of white-blue light. Lightning snapped through the spinning water, racing across every droplet until the entire vortex blazed like a storm pulled down from the heavens. The officials in the box gasped, half rising from their seats. Impossible, a dual resonance at that scale. Naruto grinned wild. Let's turn it up. He drove his blades forward. The lightning-laced water surged into Gaara's sand tornado, not just clashing, overwhelming. The sand hissed, cracked apart, and exploded outward in a violent spray that rattled the whole arena. Gaara was thrown back hard, skidding across the dirt. In a flash, Naruto was on him, blades crossed at his throat, lightning still crackling faintly along their edges. Silence hung for a breath, the storm fading into dripping water and settling dust. Then the crowd erupted, thunderous cheers, whistles, stamping feet. Naruto stood panting, grin splitting his face. Gaara blinked up at him, chest heaving, hair in his eyes. A smirk tugged at his lips, faint but unmistakable. "You'd really get me the sequel?" Naruto barked a laugh, lowering the blades an inch. "Heck yeah. You fight me like that, you earn it. Besides," he nudged Gaara's shoulder with the hilt, "you're way cooler swinging a sword than flipping pages." The crowd laughed with him. Even the proctor cracked a smile as he raised his hand high. "Winner, Uzumaki Naruto." The stands shook with applause. Sakura leaned against the railing, her throat tight with pride. Mira flushed as the girls around her whispered, "So she's the one with the sequel," shooting her sideways glances. Kakashi's eye curved in quiet approval. On the balcony, Raza sighed into his palm. "Only my kid," he muttered, but there was warmth under the exasperation. Naruto offered Gaara a hand. For a heartbeat Gaara stared, then clasped it and let himself be pulled up. He muttered just loud enough for Naruto alone, "Don't keep me waiting." Naruto's laugh rang out, bright and unrestrained. "Deal." The two walked off the field together, not enemies, not rivals, but something new, something unspoken. The arena thundered with applause, the stands alive with laughter and cheers. Sakura clapped until her palms stung, Mira flushed crimson as the girls around her kept whispering about her and the sequel, and even Celine joined in, rising to her feet and applauding along with them. For a moment, she let herself smile, caught up in the pride and the relief of seeing Naruto shine so brightly in front of the whole village. Beside her, Jiraiya clapped too, loud and boisterous, grin wide enough to fool anyone who looked his way. The girls nearby laughed, some even waving down at Naruto as if he could see them through the sea of faces. But between the beats of applause, Celine and Jiraiya shared a glance. It was brief, gone as quickly as it came, but heavy. Naruto had been incredible, his resonance, his will, his unshakable drive. He had proven, beyond doubt, that his potential was boundless. And that was the problem. For every cheer that carried his name, there were men in the shadows who wanted exactly that power, who would tear him apart to claim it. The applause echoed, but beneath it both Jiraiya and Celine heard the quiet truth: brilliance draws predators. Jiraiya's grin never faltered, but his eyes hardened. Celine clapped on with the others, her smile soft, but her knuckles white against her palms. Naruto was amazing. And because of that he was in more danger than ever. Sasuke stepped into the arena and the crowd erupted, cheers rising like a wave. The Uchiha name still carried weight, and here he was, heir to it, cool and untouchable. Shino followed, quieter but no less respected, his reputation built on precision and eerie control. Sasuke glanced up into the stands and, with a smirk, blew a kiss toward Mira. The girls in the crowd swooned, shrieking with delight, while Mira's face went crimson, her hands flying to her cheeks. The reaction only widened Sasuke's smirk. In the ring, Shino lowered his high collar just enough to ready himself. A spear slipped into his hand, twirling with practiced ease. At the same time, thin strands of silk spilled from his sleeves, glistening in the sunlight. Already he was weaving, preparing the trap before the first strike. Sasuke's Sharingan bled red into his eyes, spinning to life. Flames licked across his body, soul resonance surging, and in a burst of light the form of a great phoenix unfurled behind him. Its wings stretched wide, fire curling in its wake. Everyone watching knew what this meant. This wasn't going to be a long fight. It would be decided in moments. Interception against entrapment, raw flame against cold silk. Two prodigies, each with reaction speed and strategy honed razor sharp. The proctor's hand fell. Begin. Sasuke moved first, charging forward in a blur, eyes cutting across the strands of web. His Sharingan tracked each thread, weaving through the gaps with impossible precision. He danced closer, always advancing, never caught. But Shino was no one-trick spider. He poured more resonance into his threads, weaving thicker, stranger strands. The web bent and shifted, threads snapping forward like fangs. When Sasuke slashed one down, another wound around his wrist, another snagged his shoulder. In seconds he was caught, trapped, the silk biting tight. The crowd gasped. Whispers rippled too fast, too logical, Shino already has him. Shino stepped forward at last, the predator closing on prey. His spear angled low, ready to strike. Sasuke sighed. TCH. I was saving this for Naruto. Then the phoenix flared black. His flames darkened, twisting into something more terrible. Black fire licked across his skin, forming an armor of writhing Amaterasu. The webs caught and burned instantly, disintegrating in bursts of smoke and ash. The crowd erupted, half in awe, half in fear. Shino's eyes widened behind his glasses. He backpedaled fast, silk snapping out to cover his retreat. But Sasuke wasn't letting him run. The black armor shifted, reshaping back into the phoenix, and then, impossibly, it detached. The flaming bird launched into the sky on wings of nightfire and dove straight for Shino. The sand prodigy flipped back, landing light and fast, his hands blurring. Silk threaded across his fingers, and with a flick, he sent shurikens spinning, each one tugged mid-flight by threads that bent their paths, curving them like predators circling prey. The blades whirled around, closing in from impossible angles. Sasuke smirked, raising a hand. The phoenix split apart into a barrage of black fireballs, each one strkng through the air. They met the silk-guided shuriken mid-flight. The sky erupted. Shuriken melted in bursts of black flame, silk strands sizzling into ash. The crowd gasped as one. Even in the observation box, the officials were on their feet. Those flames. Impossible. The last Uchiha who could wield Amaterasu was Itachi, someone finished, voice hushed. And now, his brother stood in the arena, the black flames of legend burning at his command. Up in the officials' box, the atmosphere shifted instantly when the phoenix flared black. The roar of the crowd was one thing, wild, ecstatic, but among the leaders, the sound that followed was silence. One advisor leaned forward hard against the railing, eyes wide. That's Amaterasu. That shouldn't be possible. Another swallowed, voice shaking. The last Uchiha who could wield that fire was Itachi, and it nearly destroyed half our ANBU squads trying to contain him. Raza's expression hardened, though his voice stayed steady. So the younger son holds it now. He masked the pride with irritation, but his fingers clenched tight against the wood. Celine applauded with the crowd, her smile warm for Naruto's teammate, but her eyes cut sideways to Jiraiya. The same thought ran between them without a word. Naruto wasn't the only child carrying a dangerous legacy. Jiraiya's grin stayed fixed, but in his eyes there was a glint of unease. First Naruto with his resonant storm, now Sasuke with black flame. Both brilliant, both too bright. And bright things always draw shadows. The applause thundered on, but inside the box the weight of history pressed heavy. In the stands, Sakura's hands flew to her mouth the moment the phoenix turned black. She had cheered when Sasuke blew the kiss to Mira, laughed when the crowd swooned, but this was different. The flames clung to him like living shadows, devouring silk, devouring air, devouring everything. Her heart hammered so loud she could barely hear the crowd. That's impossible, she whispered, trembling. Those flames, it's like nothing I've ever. Kakashi stood beside her, one hand still in his pocket, the other resting lightly on the railing. His visible eye narrowed, tracking every shift of Sasuke's stance, every movement of Shino's retreat. The murmurs around them meant nothing to him. He had seen those flames before. Amaterasu, he muttered under his breath. His tone was steady, but his stomach turned with the weight of the word. The memory of Itachi, the BLD, the black fire that ate through walls, the smell of ash that clung for weeks pressed sharp in his mind. And now, his student stood wielding it like a natural extension of himself. Sakura looked up at him, her face pale. Kakashi-sensei, what does it mean? Kakashi didn't answer at first. His gaze stayed on Sasuke, the black phoenix screaming down from the air, splitting into fireballs that melted Shino's weapons. The crowd gasped and cheered, but he only saw the cold fact. "It means," he said finally, voice low, "that Sasuke's carrying more than I thought. More than even he knows." He exhaled slow, I still fixed on the boy below. And that means his path just became more dangerous. Sakura gripped the railing tighter, torn between pride and fear. Sasuke looked magnificent, untouchable, brilliant, alive in a way that made the crowd adore him. But the fire on his body wasn't like Naruto's bright storms. It wasn't light. It was hunger. And deep down, even as she clapped with the others, she felt the chill of it. Naruto sat alone on the bench, the roar of the crowd fading into something far away. His grin wasn't the usual wide, boyish thing, it was quieter, steadier, pride running deeper than noise. His eyes never left Sasuke. He remembered that night by the fire, just the two of them, shadows stretched long, flames crackling low. There hadn't been rivalry then, no need for words sharper than the ones they chose. Just honesty. Sasuke had spoken of his clan, of the weight of carrying their name forward. Not revenge, not anger, but duty. A legacy he refused to let die, one he meant to honor with every step he took. And Naruto, nervous at first, had laid his sword across his knees. His mother's sword. A gift, a reminder, and a burden. He'd told Sasuke it wasn't a weapon he could play at. It was proof someone had believed in him before he'd even learned to believe in himself. Every swing of it, every fight, was for her to make her proud, wherever she was watching from. They had sat there in the glow of the fire, two boys bound not by rivalry but by the promise to live up to ghosts that mattered. Now, as Sasuke's black phoenix split the air and the crowd gasped, Naruto's chest swelled with pride. His hand rested lightly on the hilt of his mother's sword at his side. "You better win this, Sasuke," he whispered, voice firm. "Because I still owe her my turn." Sasuke kept pressing, step by step, his Sharingan burning red, his presence forcing Shino back across the arena floor. Shino's movement stayed sharp and controlled, his spear flashing in arcs as his silk spun faster, strands tightening into crystalline threads of ice. The crowd gasped at the sudden shift, the officials in the box murmuring at his precision. But the black flames didn't waver. The moment the ice threads touched Amaterasu, they hissed and melted, dripping away before they could even hold. Shino exhaled slowly, his shoulders easing. He knew the truth, he had shown his strength, pushed Sasuke to reveal the depth of his fire, but there was no path forward against those flames. He lowered his weapon, the silk falling slack, and sighed. "Enough. I yield." The crowd roared, stamping feet and clapping, their cheers rolling like thunder. Sasuke's flames receded, the phoenix folding into ash and silence. He straightened, then bowed to Shino, the gesture crisp and respectful. Shino returned it without hesitation. This wasn't about life or death, this was about proving themselves hunters, worthy of stepping into a higher rank. And in their own ways, they had. The proctor lifted his hand high, voice cutting above the cheers. "Winner, Uchiha Sasuke." The crowd erupted again, but in the arena the two boys shared a moment of quiet dignity, fire and silk, each acknowledging the other's skill. The roar of applause for Sasuke still echoed through the stone when the proctor stepped forward again, lifting his hand for quiet. It took a long moment, the crowd was still buzzing from back-to-back storms of brilliance, but slowly the cheers dimmed into an eager hush. His voice rang across the arena. "The final match of the exams will be Uzumaki Naruto vs Uchiha Sasuke." The silence broke like a dam bursting. The stands erupted, cheers rolling in waves, banners snapping in the wind. Villagers shouted themselves hoarse, some crying Naruto's name, others chanting Sasuke's, all of them swept into the fever of seeing the two brightest flames of their generation collide. The proctor raised his hand again, steadying the storm. "The final match will begin in 30 minutes. Both competitors will be given time to rest and prepare." The crowd didn't care about patience, they only roared louder, stamping their feet, the arena vibrating under the thunder of anticipation. Naruto leaned back on the bench, heart racing, grin splitting his face wide. Finally, he muttered under his breath, eyes locked on Sasuke across the ring. This is the one I've been waiting for. Sasuke turned just enough to glance his way, Sharingan fading, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. No words. He didn't need them. The promise was already there. Up in the stands, Sakura pressed her hands together, nervous and excited all at once. Celine and Jiraiya exchanged another look, the same one they'd shared before. Pride and fear, tangled tighter now than ever. The noise of the crowd rolled on, chanting their names, as if the entire village was leaning forward at once. Naruto. Sasuke. 30 minutes to breathe before the storm. The announcement still thundered through the arena when Naruto and Sasuke made their way up from the ring. The crowd went absolutely wild, cheers rolling in waves, banners snapping as villagers stamped their feet. Every eye followed them, two names now echoing louder than any others. But instead of staying apart, they climbed to the stands. The din followed them, a wall of noise that shook the air, until they reached the section where Celine, Sakura, Mira, and the other girls sat, with Kakashi and Jiraiya standing just behind. Naruto hopped the last step, grinning wide, waving like he was greeting family. Hey! You guys see that? His voice cracked against the cheers, but he didn't care. His excitement spilled out of him. First me, then him, we lit the place up. Sasuke followed quieter, though the crowd's screams rose even louder for him. He slipped into the row, every step calm, but his red eyes still gleamed faintly, the trace of the phoenix flickering beneath his skin. Mira's cheeks went red again when Sasuke brushed close, the memory of that kiss he'd blown her earlier still burning hot. The other girls all leaned in, whispering fast, eyes darting between them and Naruto. Celine smiled warmly, her hands still tingling from clapping. You both were incredible, she said, her voice steady but her gaze heavier when it met Jiraiya's over their shoulders. Pride for Naruto. Respect for Sasuke. And the silent reminder that brilliance like theirs never went unnoticed by the wrong people. Jiraiya chuckled, arms folded. Not bad for a couple of brats, he said loud enough to cover the weight in his eyes. Kakashi gave a lazy little eye-crease smile, but his mind was already spinning, calculating. 2 students, both shining so brightly in front of the whole village and beyond. Naruto plopped into a seat, still buzzing. 30 minutes, huh? Perfect. Enough time to breathe, then we show them what we can really do. Sasuke stood at the railing instead, looking out over the roaring crowd, silent but sharp. He didn't need to say it. The fire in his eyes said enough. And in that little section of the stands, surrounded by their teachers, their friends, and a village that could hardly contain itself, the 2 boys sat side by side, storm and flame, about to collide. The crowd's roar rolled on, chants of their names shaking the stands. Naruto was still soaking it in, grinning, waving to anyone who locked eyes with him. Sasuke, by contrast, leaned against the railing, his Sharingan dimming back to black, the faint heat of Amaterasu still clinging to him. Mira's pulse hadn't calmed since the fight began. She had seen him smirk through the black fire, cut through silk like it was nothing, and bow with that same sharp grace. It wasn't the first time she'd seen him shine like that. It wasn't even the first time she'd kissed him. But something about this moment, the noise, the pride, the way his fire still seemed to hang in the air, made her grab for him anyway. She stepped in, caught his collar, and pulled him down into her. Their lips met, quick and sure, familiar and fierce all at once. The girls around them squealed and laughed, though less in shock than in envy. Naruto spun mid-sentence, caught the sight, and groaned loud enough for the whole row. Really? You save it for now? Mira pulled back, still holding Sasuke's shirt, her face flushed but her smile steady. What? He earned it. Sasuke smirked, a little more relaxed than usual, and brushed her hand off his collar with mock annoyance. You just wanted the crowd. Maybe, she teased, though her eyes said otherwise. Celine clapped politely, her smile touched with warmth. Jiraiya just chuckled low, shaking his head like he'd seen it all before. Kakashi leaned on the railing, his lone eye crinkling with a smile that betrayed nothing. Naruto dropped into his seat, arms crossed, muttering, "TCH. Just wait, till my fight. Then we'll see who everyone's kissing." The moment didn't last long. The proctor's voice soon echoed again over the stands, reminding everyone the break would end. But for those few minutes, with the whole village screaming their names, Mira and Sasuke were just themselves, a little reckless, a little proud, and exactly where they wanted to be. The break hummed with noise, the crowd still buzzing, but Naruto wasn't paying much attention. He was grinning wide, still riding the high of his win, blades resting across his knees as he slouched back on the bench. Then he glanced sideways. Rumi was there, calm in the middle of the chaos. She hadn't screamed like the others or squealed like the girls, just smiled in that steady way of hers. And when her eyes met his, all the adrenaline in him hit differently. His face warmed, the grin faltering into something almost shy. She leaned close enough that her words reached only him. Her voice was soft, threaded with certainty. "When the exams are done we need to talk." Naruto's heart jumped. For once he didn't joke, didn't bluster. He just nodded quickly, his voice lower than usual. "Yeah, over dinner. I still owe you that date, right?" Her smile deepened, quiet and sure. "Right." Naruto turned back toward the arena, still grinning, but now for a different reason. Naruto reached for the cup at his side, the condensation cold against his fingers as he drank deep. The water slid down his throat, cooling the fire still buzzing in his chest from his fight with Gaara. He let out a sharp breath, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand, trying to steady himself for what was coming next. Rumi shifted closer, her presence steady in the swirl of noise. Without a word, she leaned in and pressed a light kiss to his cheek. The contact was simple, but it sent a fresh warmth running through him that no roar of the crowd could touch. Naruto blinked, startled, then grinned, his face heating more than the water had cooled. Rumi laced her fingers through his, their hands resting together between them. He didn't pull away. Didn't joke. He just let the comfort settle there, grounding him in a way nothing else could. The crowd's chants of his name thundered on, the proctor's voice already reminding everyone that the finals were near. Naruto squeezed her hand once, firm. Then he finished the water, rolled his shoulders, and stood. Final match. Him and Sasuke. Everything they'd promised by that fire so long ago. And now it was time. Naruto set the empty cup aside, wiping the last drop of water from his chin. The noise of the crowd was rising again, the proctor's voice already echoing across the arena, calling for the final match to prepare. He turned back to Rumi, her hand still in his, her steady gaze cutting through all the chaos. For a second, the noise of the stadium fell away, and it was just the two of them. Naruto leaned forward, quick and sure, and kissed her. Not the cheek this time, but a real kiss, short and bright, carrying all the fire and nerves bundled in his chest. When he pulled back, his grin was sheepish but unshaken. "For good luck," he said, his voice rough but honest. Rumi smiled, her cheeks flushed but her eyes steady. "Then make it count." Naruto gave her hand one last squeeze before letting go. He turned toward the arena steps, shoulders straight, the grin spreading again as the chants of his name grew louder. Final match. Him and Sasuke. No more waiting. Naruto pulled back from Rumi, still grinning, still flushed, and the crowd noise seemed to wash back in like a wave. For a moment, time held between them, then the gasps and whispers hit. The girls nearby all squealed at once, half shocked, half delighted. Mira nearly dropped the drink in her hand, stammering, he actually kissed her in front of everyone. Her friends tugged her sleeves, whispering fast, eyes darting between Rumi and Naruto. Sakura froze, mouth open, caught between surprise and a little sting in her chest. She forced herself to smile, clapping her hands together, but her eyes lingered on Naruto a second longer than she meant to. Kakashi's visible eye curved in amusement. "Bold move," he murmured under his breath, though his tone carried that note of approval only a teacher could give. Jiraiya gave a low whistle, arms crossed. "That's my boy. Finally figured it out." Even Celine laughed softly, shaking her head as she joined the applause of the crowd. "Good luck, indeed." Naruto squeezed Rumi's hand one last time, then stood. His grin was brighter now, not just for the fight, but for her. He started down the steps, the stadium chanting his name, the energy shaking the air. Across the way, Sasuke rose too, calm and sharp as ever, the faintest smirk tugging at his lips. He didn't look at the crowd. He looked at Naruto. The proctor's voice cut clean through the noise. Final match: Uzumaki Naruto vs Uchiha Sasuke. Competitors, return to the arena. The crowd's roar became thunder. Two boys, two legacies, one clash left to decide it all. Naruto stepped onto the arena floor, blades in hand, no hesitation left. His soul resonance whipped through the steel, water spiraling around him in rushing torrents. Lightning snapped into the current, crawling across every droplet until the two elements braided together into a living storm that crackled against the stone at his feet. Across from him, Sasuke's eyes bled crimson, the Sharingan spinning with predatory clarity. Flames roared to life along his body, crawling into armor that shimmered and pulsed. Behind him, the great phoenix unfurled, wings spreading wide, fire licking upward until it merged seamlessly with his stance, the boy and the bird as one. The crowd fell silent all at once. Thousands of breaths caught, every gaze fixed on the two of them. Even the officials in the box leaned forward, lips pressed tight, as if history itself was about to split open in front of them. The proctor's hand cut the air. His voice rang out, hard and final. "Begin." The world seemed to snap in two. Naruto surged forward, blades alive with lightning water resonance, cutting arcs that lit the air blue and white. Sasuke met him head-on, his phoenix armor blazing, sword slashing with fire so hot the stone beneath his feet cracked. When they collided, the sound wasn't steel, it was thunder. The clash shook the arena, a shockwave blasting dust and grit into the stands. The air itself shivered, the weight of their power colliding so violently it felt like the storm and the fire were trying to tear the world apart. The crowd roared, but only faintly beneath the greater roar, the clash of two legacies, two promises, meeting at last. Naruto spun his blades wide, resonance flooding outward until the air above him twisted into a roaring whirlpool. Water surged high, spinning fast, pulling droplets into a cyclone that shimmered under the sun. Lightning cracked through it, crawling down into his arms and blades until every strike became a blur of storm-made flesh. He charged faster than the eye could follow, each swing a streak of blue-white light. Sasuke's Sharingan spun, eyes tracking every flicker of movement. What looked like chaos to the crowd was crystal clear to him, every angle, every twitch, every flash of lightning before it landed. His flames surged, armor blazing, sword igniting into a searing arc of fire. They collided in a storm of elements. Naruto's electric whirlpool strikes slammed against Sasuke's flaming counters, water hissing to steam, sparks bursting into the air, fire roaring hotter with every impact. The ground beneath them cracked and smoked, the shockwaves rolling outward and rattling the very walls of the arena. From the stands, it was impossible to keep up. All they could see were flashes of storm and fire clashing in the center ring, two figures moving too fast for ordinary eyes, the air itself torn apart by their resonance. Naruto shouted, voice carrying over the storm. "You're not stopping me, Sasuke." His blade spun faster, lightning snapping like thunder as he pressed harder into the whirlpool's current. Sasuke's smirk cut through the heat. "Then try harder." His phoenix flared, the flames erupting as his sword blazed like the sun itself, each swing burning against Naruto's storm until the air became a battlefield of fire and lightning. The crowd roared, the noise trembling into awe. This wasn't a match anymore, it was a tempest made of two boys who refused to be anything less than legends. The arena became a battlefield of nature itself. Naruto's whirlpool swelled higher, twisting until it tore open into a roaring electric typhoon, lightning threading every drop, flashing bright as a storm dragged down from the sky. Across from him, Sasuke's flames spiraled upward, fanning out into a tornado of fire. The phoenix's wings beat within it, each flare driving the cyclone hotter, brighter, until it raged like a pillar to the heavens. The crowd forgot to breathe. Thousands of voices hushed all at once, the sight so overwhelming it silenced even the loudest cheers. And in the eye of that storm, the two boys moved. Blades met in the center, steel ringing sharp and clear over the thunder and flame. Naruto's strikes blurred, water and lightning snapping with impossible speed, each slash a stormborn arc. Sasuke's eyes read every twitch, every flicker, the Sharingan seeing where no one else could, his flaming blade intercepting again and again, sparks bursting where water hissed against fire. Each impact shook the ground. Each clash sent ripples tearing outward, shaking the air, rattling the walls. The elements roared, but the fight at its heart was sharper, purer, two hunters clashing not as children anymore, but as equals. The crowd was already on its feet, but it was the shinobi, the jonin and the officials who watched with the sharpest eyes. Kakashi gripped the railing, his single eye narrowing as it tracked every impossible blur. Their rhythm, they're reading each other like open books, he muttered, voice low but taut. Most jonin couldn't survive in that storm. Kurenai's breath caught as lightning arced across the typhoon. Naruto shouldn't have that level of control. Not yet. She shook her head, her voice carrying both awe and unease. It's like he's wielding two resonances as one. Asuma exhaled a long stream of smoke, the cigarette trembling slightly between his fingers. And Sasuke, he added, gaze fixed on the flame tornado spiraling higher. That's not raw talent. That's mastery of something that should have burned him alive. Guy's teeth flashed in a broad grin as he slammed his fist into his palm. Marvelous. Flames of youth roaring against the storm. Their rivalry is the furnace that will forge them both into steel. Even the quieter jonin leaned forward, pale but transfixed. They knew this wasn't just another exam match. It was the kind of clash whispered about for years after. Up in the box, the atmosphere was heavier. One advisor leaned hard over the railing, voice urgent. If this power isn't contained. Another snapped back, you think you can contain it? Look at them. Raza's jaw tightened as the firestorm rose, his voice flat but laced with tension. The Uchiha's son carrying fire darker than even his brother. The Hokage's eyes were calm, but his hands folded tightly in his sleeves. He watched Naruto's storm and Sasuke's flames meet in the center, his voice a murmur only those closest heard. Two boys. Both carrying legacies that should have crushed them. And instead they burn brighter. Celine and Jiraiya exchanged a look in the back of the box. They clapped when the crowd clapped, but their eyes stayed fixed, heavier, sharper. Jiraiya's grin was there, but his voice was grim in her ear. This is what I meant. His resonance isn't just a gift. It's a beacon. Every predator in the shadows just felt that storm break. Celine's hands folded, knuckles white. And Sasuke? Jiraiya exhaled. Another beacon. Different fire, same danger. The question now is whether they'll burn each other or everything around them. And still, in the center of the storm, Naruto's electric typhoon and Sasuke's flame tornado clashed, the boys' blades striking sharp through the chaos. The whirlpool raged higher, lightning tearing through every surge of water until it became a storm all its own. Opposite it, the phoenix's fire spun tighter, a tornado of flame reaching skyward, heat searing against stone. Then they struck at once. The typhoon of water and lightning slammed into the tornado of fire, and the world split open. For an instant the elements merged, water hissing, fire screaming, lightning racing through both before the pressure tore free. An explosion ripped across the arena. Steam blasted upward in a boiling wave, rolling over the stands, hissing against the stone walls. Thunder cracked overhead, a sound so sharp it rattled glass windows in the village below. The shockwave threw both boys back, skidding across the scarred floor, blades scraping trails as they dug in to stop themselves. The crowd gasped as the mist poured over the ring, cloaking everything in a blinding fog. Cheers turned to silence, the entire stadium holding its breath, waiting to see which figure would emerge first. From the box, one advisor slammed his palms against the rail. That wasn't just resonance clashing, that was a full-scale elemental detonation. Kakashi's voice was calm, but his eye was taut. And they're both still standing. In the mist, two silhouettes shifted. One dripping with water and sparks, the other haloed by faint, guttering flame. Both boys dragging themselves upright. Both refusing to fall. And at the center of it all, the hiss of steam and the crackle of lingering thunder. The detonation ripped through the arena, blasting both boys back. Steam poured into the air, thick and white, hissing as it rolled over the stone. Thunder rumbled above, echoing the clash that had just shaken the ground. For a few heartbeats, nothing could be seen. The crowd leaned forward in silence, trying to pierce the fog, waiting to see who would rise. Then the mist began to thin. On one side, Naruto staggered to his feet, blades dripping with water, sparks crawling along their edges as the storm around him rebuilt itself. His grin was back, tired, but fierce, pride burning bright in his eyes. On the other, Sasuke straightened, flames guttering across his armor before flaring hot again, the phoenix silhouette still alive behind him. His Sharingan spun sharp and clear, every detail of the battlefield etched into his sight. The steam curled away, leaving them both visible at last. Naruto lifted his blades, pointing them across the ring. "Not bad, team. But I'm just getting warmed up." Sasuke's smirk was small, his voice calm but sharp as the edge of fire. "Then stop talking, dope. Prove it." The crowd erupted again, the roar rolling like thunder. And in the center of the ring, the storm and the flames built for another clash. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, the Sharingan spinning faster until his vision burned red. He raised his blade, and the phoenix behind him roared, its body twisting fully into black fire. The air warped around it, the ground beneath his feet cracking from the heat. With a single step forward, Sasuke unleashed at Amaterasu. The phoenix of shadow flames screamed across the ring, wings spread wide as it dove straight for Naruto, its fire promising to consume everything in its path. The crowd gasped, many shielding their faces from the sheer heat rolling off the flames. But Naruto didn't flinch. His grin split wide, storm-light gleaming in his eyes. He lifted his blades, and resonance exploded outward, water and lightning fusing tighter than ever. The air shuddered, the ground quaked, as the whirlpool swelled into something vaster, deeper. The current curved and twisted, shaping itself into a titanic form that towered behind him. A leviathan. Its body shimmered with swirling water, scales flickering with electric light, every movement radiating the weight of the ocean. Sparks arced across its fangs as it reared high above Naruto, letting out a soundless roar that shook the mist away. The stands went silent in awe, a phoenix of black fire diving, a leviathan of storm rising to meet it. Naruto's blades pointed forward. His voice carried through the roar. "Let's see if your fire can burn the sea, Sasuke." The leviathan surged, lightning cracking as it drove straight into the Amaterasu phoenix. The collision split the air, flame and storm ripping into each other, the very arena trembling beneath the clash of two summoned titans. The storm raged around them, phoenix and leviathan locked in a death struggle above while blades rang sharp below. Naruto's strikes blurred like lightning through rain, every cut carrying the crash of his water-formed storm. Sasuke met him without falter, his Sharingan drinking in every movement, fire bursting from each counterstroke, Amaterasu's black edges burning against the wet air. The ground split beneath their feet, stone shattered by the weight of their resonance. Steam hissed in waves, flame and thunder rolled like a drum, and still neither boy gave an inch. Steel locked hard. Naruto's twin blades crossed against Sasuke's flaming sword. Their eyes met over the bind, both of them grinning despite the sweat and the BLD. "Looks like we're even," Naruto said, voice tight but burning with exhilaration. Sasuke's smirk didn't waver. "Even? You're still one step behind." Naruto chuckled, low and defiant. "Guess I'll just have to fix that." He pulled back, blades spinning wide, and something shifted in the air. The storm around him answered, not just water, not just lightning, but a sharper current rising to meet him. The wind howled, sudden and fierce, wrapping his blades, swirling with the storm like a new breath added to a drowning sea. The crowd gasped as the air itself bent to him, the edges of his weapons glowing white-green with slicing resonance. "Wind," Naruto muttered, his grin widening as the new element surged alive. "Let's see if you can keep up with this, Sasuke." The Leviathan above reared, its body shuddering as the storm twisted tighter, lightning crackling through spirals of wind. The phoenix flared back, shrieking fire into the sky. And below, the boys charged again, storm and flame colliding, but now with a gale screaming between them. The gale ripped across the arena, wind shrieking as it wrapped around Naruto's storm. His blades moved faster than before, the edges slicing with an almost invisible precision. Each strike carried the weight of water, the fury of lightning, and now the razor edge of air itself. Sasuke's Sharingan whirled, his sword blazing with fire as he parried, dodged, countered. But even he was forced to admit Naruto had the upper hand now. His blows came faster. Sharper, a storm breaking against fire, pushing the phoenix back step by step. The crowd roared at every clash, convinced they were watching the CLMX, convinced Naruto was about to win. But then Sasuke saw it. In the blur of movement, when the wind whipped Naruto's jacket aside, he caught the faint flare of black etching across his skin. The curse marks. Crawling like firebrands beneath the stormlight. Naruto's grin faltered, his strikes growing heavier, wilder. The wind shrieked louder, losing its rhythm, turning from precise to uncontrolled. His eyes flickered not just with resonance, but with something unstable, something that didn't belong. The audience didn't notice. To them, it was just more of the storm. But Sasuke saw everything. He saw the way Naruto's body strained, the way the marks pulsed in time with the gale. He's losing it, Sasuke realized, chest tightening. If he keeps going, this won't stop at me. It'll consume him. Naruto staggered mid-swing, his blades shaking in his grip. The wind howled once more, then broke, collapsing into nothing. The storm shuddered and died, leaving only silence and the smell of scorched earth. The Leviathan above dissolved into mist. The phoenix's flames dimmed. Naruto stood hunched, chest heaving, sweat pouring down his face. His blades fell to his sides, the light gone from them. Slowly, he shook his head. "I'm done," he muttered, voice raw. "You win, Sasuke." The crowd gasped, then erupted in confusion, shouts echoing across the arena. No one understood why he had stopped. No one but Sasuke, his crimson eyes still fixed on the fading curse marks. Sasuke lowered his blade, his smirk gone, replaced by something quieter. He didn't move to gloat. Didn't press the victory. He just nodded once, sharp and solemn. The proctor hesitated, then raised his hand. "Winner Uchiha Sasuke." The cheers rolled like thunder again, but in the quiet space between them, Sasuke never took his eyes off Naruto, the only one who knew the storm hadn't ended because of strength, but because of something darker stirring beneath. The roar of the crowd washed over the arena, but Sasuke hardly heard it. His Sharingan dimmed back to black, the phoenix's fire settling into embers around him. His eyes stayed fixed on Naruto, hunched, blades lowered, chest still heaving. He should have won. Naruto had him on the ropes, had pushed harder than anyone thought possible. With the storm of water, lightning, and wind, he had overwhelmed everything Sasuke threw at him. For a moment, even Sasuke had thought it was over. But then the marks had flared. Sasuke saw the way Naruto's strikes had turned wild, the wind losing its rhythm. He saw the shadow creeping under his skin, the same darkness that had nearly claimed others before. And then he saw Naruto stop it. Naruto had wanted this win more than anything. Sasuke knew that. He respected it. But in the end, Naruto had chosen to hold back. To give it up. Not because he couldn't push further but because he wouldn't let himself become something he wasn't. Sasuke's grip tightened on his sword. His chest ached with something heavier than victory. He should have won, Sasuke thought, lips pressing into a thin line. But he'd rather lose than turn into a monster. He straightened, gave a slow, respectful nod in Naruto's direction, and lowered his blade completely. No gloating, no words. Just acknowledgement. Because for all the flames Sasuke carried, he knew in that moment Naruto's choice had burned brighter than victory. The officials in the box leaned forward as the storm broke, confusion etched across their faces. Why did he stop? One murmured. He had Sasuke beaten, another said, disbelief heavy in his tone. The storm just collapsed. Did he run out of strength? Only Hiruzen knew the truth. His old eyes had caught what no one else had, the black marks crawling across Naruto's skin, the resonance twisting just before it fell apart. He'd seen too many young shinobi scarred by seals and curses not to recognize it. And watching Naruto deliberately lower his blades, surrendering the fight rather than risk losing himself, broke something deep in the Hokage's chest. But he said nothing of what he saw. Instead, Hiruzen exhaled a long, weary breath, his voice carrying steady and clear across the box. Uzumaki Naruto has not yet mastered wind. He knew he would lose control, so he quit before he endangered himself or anyone else. The advisors looked at each other, then nodded slowly. Raza, arms crossed, gave a single approving nod of his own. It takes a true hunter to remember what he's fighting for and not let the moment consume him. Another official leaned back, expression softening. Yes. To recognize when to step away, that is as great a strength as pressing forward. The others murmured their approval, voices carrying agreement. But Hiruzen's heart weighed heavy, the ache of pride and sorrow twined together. He alone knew how close Naruto had come and how much it had cost him to stop. Still, he kept that truth locked away. Because Naruto had chosen restraint, and Hiruzen would honor that choice. The stadium roared, villagers shouting both boys' names, but the sound only rang hollow in Celine's ears. She clapped once, twice, then let her hands fall to her lap. Her eyes stayed fixed on Naruto, shoulders hunched, blades dragging, storm gone. Beside her, Jiraiya didn't even bother with the pretense. His arms stayed folded, his jaw tight, his face shadowed by the weight in his eyes. When their gazes met, it wasn't pride they shared. It was anger. And grief. Celine's throat tightened. He trained so hard, she murmured, barely audible under the crowd. This should have been his moment. Jiraiya's mouth pressed into a hard line, his voice low and bitter. And Orochimaru stole it from him. That mark, he cut himself short, shaking his head. He didn't lose to Sasuke. He lost to that. Celine's hands clenched, knuckles white. She hated it for him, hated that a boy who had clawed his way here through nothing but work and will had to stop, not because he wasn't strong enough, but because someone else's cruelty lived under his skin. He should have won, she whispered, the words sharp as glass. Jiraiya's silence was heavier than any reply. His eyes never left Naruto, and though his grin had fooled the crowd earlier, there was no mask now. Just a mentor's sorrow for a student robbed of a victory he had earned. The cheers rolled on, blind and loud. But in that corner of the stands, two seasoned hunters sat with their pride burning into grief, hating the injustice of it and fearing the cost that Mark would demand in the days to come. Naruto walked out of the ring with his blades tucked at his sides, the grin fixed on his face even though his steps dragged a little heavier. The crowd kept chanting, hands clapping against stone, voices echoing high into the sky. To them, it looked like he was proud of his teammate, like nothing weighed on him. Nice job out there, Sasuke, Naruto said, his voice bright, a little too bright. Guess the best man won, huh? Sasuke walked beside him, his Sharingan already faded, flames gone. He glanced at Naruto once, then shook his head. Don't. Naruto blinked. Don't what? Don't fake it for me. Sasuke's voice was calm but firm. I saw it. The marks. You had me, and you stopped. That fight should have been yours. Naruto opened his mouth, searching for words, but Sasuke didn't let him. He stopped, turned, and pulled Naruto into a sharp hug, armor and sweat still hot. Between them. It was the best fight I've ever had, Sasuke said against his ear, low enough only Naruto could hear. Don't let anyone take that from you. Naruto froze, eyes wide. Then, slowly, the grin softened into something smaller, more real. He patted Sasuke's back once, awkward but honest, before they broke apart. The crowd still screamed their names, but in that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was that they both knew the truth and that respect ran deeper than victory. The tunnel carried them into shadow, the crowd's roar muffled to a dull ocean. Naruto and Sasuke stood there, still catching their breath, foreheads almost bumping from a quick hug neither would ever admit to. Sasuke stepped back first, but not before thumping Naruto's shoulder. Naruto answered with a smaller, truer smile, and they walked on together. The award stage blazed with banners and polished brass. Hiruzen's voice carried over the noise, calm and strong. Today, you did more than fight. You showed what it means to be hunters. He called the names one by one, and every finalist was raised. Sasuke. Sakura. Shino. Gaara. Tenten. Kankuro. Temari. And Naruto. Each one promoted, each one a chunin now. The crowd roared like thunder. When Hiruzen pinned the medal on Naruto's collar, he leaned close so only Naruto could hear. For exceptional judgment and restraint field citation of merit. That was the bravest choice on the field. Naruto nodded once, swallowing hard. Up in the balcony, Jiraiya's grin was wolf-proud, and Celine clapped until her hands stung. The tunnel carried them into shadow, the crowd's roar muffled to a dull ocean. Naruto and Sasuke stood there, still catching their breath, foreheads almost bumping from a quick hug neither would ever admit to. Sasuke stepped back first, but not before thumping Naruto's shoulder. Naruto answered with a smaller, truer smile, and they walked on together. The award stage blazed with banners and polished brass. Hiruzen's voice carried over the noise, calm and strong. Today, you did more than fight. You showed what it means to be hunters. He called the names one by one, and each finalist was raised. Sasuke. Sakura. Shino. Gaara. Lee. Kankuro. Temari. And Naruto. Each one promoted, each one a chunin now. The crowd roared like thunder. When Hiruzen pinned the medal on Naruto's collar, he leaned close so only Naruto could hear. For exceptional judgment and restraint field citation of merit. That was the bravest choice on the field. Naruto nodded once, swallowing hard. Up in the balcony, Jiraiya's grin was wolf-proud, and Celine clapped until her hands stung. The celebrations blurred into little moments. Gaara quietly asked for the sequel, and Naruto laughed as he handed it over. Sasuke smirked his way into a kiss from Mira, only for her to pull back and scold, "Quit naming techniques after me." He just kissed her nose and murmured, "No promises." Lee hopped in place, celebrating his promotion with wide-eyed joy, then appeared beside Sakura to praise her youthfulness. She blushed scarlet and, smiling shyly, gave him her number. The rest of the town celebrated deep into the night, music and cheers spilling into every street. But in the distance, away from the noise, Naruto and Rumi walked hand in hand, quiet in the glow of lantern light. When they reached a bench beneath the trees, she stopped and turned to him. I need to tell you something, she said. He looked into her brown eyes and saw the fear, their despair mixed with desperation. His grin faded, replaced with something serious. She slipped off her sweater. Naruto's face flushed, unprepared to see her without the heavy clothes she always wore. But then his eyes widened for another reason. Purple patterns coiled all along her arms. He gasped, but before he could speak, her words tumbled out fast and shaking. My father was a demon, not like the ones you hunters face, but one of Jiraiya's. I know that doesn't make it better. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid you'd hate me. Celine said to cover up, to never show them, but when we became friends, when we got closer, I couldn't keep hiding it. I'm sorry. I know it's terrible, but maybe you'd still love me. Her voice broke into tears. She realized he hadn't said a word, just staring at her with his mouth slightly open. Her heart sank. Then he finally breathed, appealing. You are so appealing. She froze. Surely she misheard. What did you say? Naruto stepped forward, cupping her cheek with one hand and running his other along her shoulder, tracing the smooth patterned skin. He didn't see Orochimaru. He didn't see a demon. He saw her. Just her. And she was perfect. You're appealing, Rumi, he said again, firmer this time. No patterns will ever change that. Her tears shifted into a sob of relief as she collapsed against him, laughter breaking through the crying. He held her close, strong arms steady around her. When their lips finally met, the kiss was deep and certain, sealing everything they hadn't been able to say until now. They didn't move at first. Just held on. Her face buried against his shoulder, his arms wrapped firm around her, the sound of her sobs softening into breaths. The noise of the festival, the cheers still echoing across the village, felt far away. Here, under the trees and lantern glow, there was only the two of them, pressed together like the rest of the world couldn't reach. Naruto closed his eyes, cheek resting against her hair. The storm inside him, the fight, the loss, the mark still crawling faint beneath his skin, all of it dulled in her arms. He wasn't the boy who had just fought Sasuke. He wasn't a demon or the next threat or the hero the village was waiting to make. He was just Naruto. And she was just Rumi. Her hands clutched his back tighter, fingers curling into the fabric like she was afraid he might vanish if she let go. But slowly, the fear melted into warmth. He whispered it again, low against her ear, appealing, and she shook against him, laughing through tears. The stars blinked awake above them, the lanterns swaying with the night breeze. Time stretched thin, unhurried, every second a gift. When they finally pulled back, it wasn't far, just enough to look at each other, foreheads touching, breath mingling. I was so scared, she admitted, her voice raw but steady now. But you didn't even flinch. Naruto's smile was small but true. Why would I? You're Rumi. That's all that matters. Her lips trembled, then curved into the gentlest smile he'd ever seen. And when they kissed again, slower this time, it wasn't desperation. It was belonging. They stayed like that, tangled in each other's arms, until the lantern light dimmed and the sound of the village faded into silence. On a roof nearby, Jiraiya watched the lanterns bob, Kakashi landing silently beside him. They won't move tonight, Jiraiya said. But they saw enough. Then we make sure they're ready when enough becomes tomorrow, Kakashi answered. Training. Distance. Not because he's weak, because he's bright. Bright things draw shadows. Kakashi's hand tightened on the railing. Then we give him a life in the light anyway. Yeah, Jiraiya said softly. Yeah, we do. The night rolled on. The village feasted and told the story of the day storm and flame nearly split the sky. Naruto and Rumi walked back the long way, hands laced together, no longer hiding scars or patterns. Tomorrow would bring distance and danger. But tonight was simple, a medal catching moonlight in his pocket, a bench by the pond, and the quiet promise that love would be louder than fear. The morning after the exams, the village still carried the aftertaste of celebration. Flags sagged on their strings, the air smelled of smoke and bread, and laughter drifted faint from the market streets. But in the quiet garden near the inn, the mood was different. Team 7 sat together, Sakura in the grass with a flower stem in her hand, Sasuke leaning against the fence with Mira close by, Zoe sprawled across a bench, and Naruto pacing restless circles. Rumi stood in front of them, sweater folded over her arm. For the first time in years, the purple patterns traced openly across her arms. The chatter died. My father, she began, voice low but steady, was one of Jiraiya's demons. These marks their proof of him. Celine told me to hide them, to cover up, to never let anyone see. But I can't lie to you anymore. Not when we've been through everything together. I was afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd look at me and see a monster. Silence stretched. The morning wind tugged the grass, carrying her words away. Naruto stepped forward first, his fists balled tight. She told me last night. And I already told her what I think. His grin tugged wide but softer than usual. She's appealing. That's all that matters. Rumi's eyes burned, her breath catching, but the others had yet to speak. Sakura set the flower stem down and pushed herself up. Her lips trembled, but her voice came clear. Rumi, I lost my family to demons. I hated them for years. But you've fought beside us. You've saved lives. You're nothing like them. You're not your father. She stepped closer, touched Rumi's hand briefly, and smiled. You're our friend. My friend. Rumi blinked hard, her throat tight. Zoe snorted from the bench. Figures. I always thought you were hiding something cool. Demon BLD, huh? Explains the mystery. She leaned forward, grinning. Still think you're a badass. Just don't go all shadow crazy on me and we're fine. That broke the tension enough for Mira to roll her eyes, arms crossed. Honestly, I should be mad you didn't trust us sooner. Her tone was sharp, but her cheeks were pink, her eyes wet. She stepped in, pulling Rumi into a quick hug before muttering, idiot. Like I'd ever let a guy hate you for this. Especially not Naruto. Sasuke had stayed quiet the longest, his dark gaze fixed on her. When Rumi finally looked his way, he gave the smallest nod. Power isn't what makes you a monster. Choices do. His voice was even, but something softer stirred in it. You chose us. That's enough. Naruto grinned wider, proud, and without hesitation laced his fingers with Rumi's so all of them could see. Demon or not, she's part of this team. Always will be. For the first time since confessing, Rumi let herself breathe. The secret that had weighed her down for so many years was no longer hers alone, and the faces looking back at her weren't afraid. They were family. The next day at Celine's house, Naruto was in his room. Naruto stood in front of the mirror, tugging nervously at the collar of the black suit Celine had laid out for him. It felt stiff, formal, nothing like the clothes he was used to training or hunting in. His reflection stared back, hair brushed back, spikes softened by Sakura's careful hands, tie knotted far too perfectly thanks to Sasuke's begrudging instruction. He barely recognized himself. Sakura stepped back, tapping her chin, then smiled. Sophisticated. Honestly, Naruto, you almost look like you belong in those government meetings. Naruto laughed awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. Sophies what? I just don't want to trip over this tie thing. Sasuke rolled his eyes from where he leaned against the wall. Stop fidgeting. You'll look like a barbarian if you keep pulling at it. His voice was flat, but there was a twitch of amusement at the corner of his mouth. I'm not a barbarian. Naruto shot back, puffing his chest, though his hands immediately went back to fixing his cuffs, too precise to match his words. Celine's voice came from the doorway, warm and steady. You're fine, Naruto. She studied him a moment, pride softening her features. You're not the boy who first walked into my house anymore. You've grown. Naruto ducked his head, cheeks burning. He gave a small bow before he could stop himself. Thank you for everything. Sakura elbowed him lightly, grinning. You'll be fine. Just remember, she already said yes. Don't overthink it. Sasuke smirked. And don't talk with your mouth full. Naruto groaned, burying his face in his hands. You guys are the worst. But when he looked up again, the nerves were still there and so was the smile. Rumi sat at the edge of her bed while Mira and Zoe moved around her with the nervous energy of generals preparing a queen. Her hair was down for once, straight and dark, spilling over her shoulders in a soft frame that made her features stand out even more. Zoe dabbed at her cheeks with a brush, Mira adjusted the fall of the dress, both fussing while Rumi tried to sit still. The dress was black, elegant, sleek, chosen by Naruto himself. It hugged her frame gently before falling smooth and simple, the kind of beauty that didn't need embellishment. But what stood out most were her arms. For the first time, the sleeves were gone. The purple patterns shimmered faintly across her skin, invisible to civilians but undeniable to hunters. Rumi flexed her fingers in her lap, her throat tight. Do I look strange? She asked quietly. Mira stilled, then shook her head. You look strong. Like you. Zoe grinned, kneeling to fix the clasp of her shoes. And gorgeous. Don't even argue, he's going to lose his mind the second he sees you. Rumi tried to laugh, but it came out soft, almost shy. She smoothed her palms over the dress once more, then looked at her reflection. The girl in the mirror wasn't hiding anymore. Her hair was simple, her makeup light, her patterns glowing like whispers of who she was. And for once, she didn't flinch from it. She wasn't just ready for the date. She was ready to be seen. Naruto stepped out from the room, tugging lightly at the cuffs of his suit like he wasn't sure if it really fit him. His hair, usually spiked and untamed, had been brushed back just enough to look sharp without losing its edge. For once, there was nothing boyish about him, he looked every bit the young man he had become. Kakashi let out a low whistle, his visible eye crinkling with genuine amusement. Well, who knew the dobe cleaned up this well? Jiraiya clapped a broad hand on Naruto's shoulder, grinning like a proud uncle. Kid, you look stunning. I almost didn't recognize you. She's not going to stand a chance. Naruto flushed, scratching the back of his neck, but there was a smile tugging at his lips he couldn't hide. For all the battles he had fought, this standing there, waiting for Rumi somehow made his hands sweat more than any blade ever had. Yeah, well, he muttered, trying to play it cool. It's just a date. But the way his mentors looked at him, proud, amused, and a little surprised, told him they knew better. This wasn't just any night. Naruto tugged once more at his cuffs, shifting under the combined weight of Kakashi's teasing stare and Jiraiya's booming pride. He opened his mouth to insist it was just a date again. And then the door at the far end of the hall opened. Rumi stepped out. Her hair, usually tied back for training, fell loose around her shoulders, dark silk catching the light in soft waves. Mira and Zoe trailed behind her, half proud, half giddy, but it was clear she didn't need them anymore. The black dress, the one Naruto had bought her, clung in all the right places without being flashy, simple elegance made stunning just by the way she carried it. And the sleeves, cut clean away, bared her arms for the first time. To any civilian, her skin looked unmarked. But to hunters Naruto, Kakashi, Jiraiya, the purple patterns shimmered faintly beneath the light, twisting across her arms like secret constellations. Not a curse tonight, not something to be hidden. They looked almost regal. Zoe nudged Mira with a whisper that wasn't nearly as quiet as she thought. Told you he was gonna faint. Naruto didn't faint. But for a second, his breath caught sharp in his chest. The storm inside him, the nerves, the pride, the fear of messing up stilled all at once. Rumi's eyes met his, nervous and shining all at once. She smoothed her dress at the waist like she didn't know what to do with her hands. "Do I look alright?" Jiraiya chuckled under his breath, watching Naruto scramble for words. "Alright?" Naruto finally managed, voice rougher than he meant it. He took a step toward her, that sheepish grin breaking through, honest and bright. "Rumi, you look incredible." The faint blush that touched her cheeks was answer enough. They stepped out into the evening, both still blushing under the porch lights. Naruto moved quick, holding the limo door open with a stiff, too formal bow. Rumi tried not to laugh, her black dress catching the glow, her patterns faint and hidden to the world. She looked breathtaking, so much so that Naruto nearly forgot to breathe as she ducked inside. The whole gang erupted. Zoe cupped her hands around her mouth. "Don't do anything I wouldn't do." Mira doubled over, laughing. "Which means behave, you idiot." Jiraiya and Kakashi stood back, grinning. Jiraiya muttered, "Chip off the old block," while Kakashi added, "Stunning." Both of them. But it was Sasuke and Sakura who drove the dagger in. Sasuke leaned coolly against the railing, arms crossed, but the faint smirk tugged at his lips gave him away. "Tch, try not to embarrass yourself, Dobe. She's way out of your league already." Naruto spun on him, red in the ears. "Oi. I'll show you who's out of whose league." Sakura clasped her hands, eyes sparkling. "Naruto, you look so handsome. And Rumi, oh my god, you look like you just stepped out of a magazine." Rumi ducked her head, cheeks heating, but her smile only grew. "Don't forget to pull her chair out," Sasuke added, voice low and sly. "Might make you look less like a barbarian." Naruto's jaw dropped. "You too. You sound just like before. What, you think I've never been on a date or something?" "You haven't," Sakura teased, tugging Sasuke back by the arm. "So quit sulking and go make it a good one." The catcalling only got louder as Naruto climbed in after Rumi, slamming the door shut. Inside the limo, the noise dulled to a hum. Her hand slipped into his, warm and steady, and Naruto finally let out the breath he'd been holding. For the first time all night, it was just them. The limo purred to life, gliding away from Celine's house while the echoes of laughter and catcalls faded behind them. Inside, the glow of soft lights and the muted hum of the city made the space feel too big and too quiet all at once. Naruto sat a little too stiff at first, tugging at the cuff of his jacket like it was strangling him. He risked a glance sideways. Rumi sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap, her hair spilling down over her shoulders, the faint shimmer of her patterns hidden but there if you knew where to look. He scratched the back of his head. "So, you look wow. I mean, really wow. Like, if I didn't know better, I'd think I was riding with some movie star." Her cheeks flushed, but her lips curved. "You clean up pretty well yourself. I almost didn't recognize you with your hair like that." "Sophisticated, Naruto." He groaned and dropped his face into his hands. "Oh no, you sound like Sakura now." "Sophisticated? That makes me sound like an old man." She giggled softly, leaning just a little closer. "No. It makes you sound grown up." That quiet word sat between them, heavier than either expected. Grown up. After everything they had faced, everything they carried, maybe tonight wasn't about scars or patterns or battles. Maybe it was just about this. Naruto cleared his throat, trying to chase the heat from his face. I wanted this to be special for you. You deserve that. Not just ramen under the stars or something." Her fingers brushed his, shy at first, then settled warm into his palm. "You don't have to try so hard, Naruto. You're here. That's already special." The limo turned a corner, city lights strkng across the windows. Their joined hands stayed still, but neither of them let go. The limo rolled to a smooth stop in front of a high-end restaurant whose front steps glowed beneath chandeliers and soft lanterns. The doorman pulled the glass doors wide, but Naruto was already moving, slipping out of the limo and circling around with a confidence that wasn't his usual fidgeting energy. He opened the door, offered his hand, and helped Rumi out like it was second nature. She stepped onto the stone walkway, her black dress catching the light. The sleeveless cut showed her arms openly now, her patterns invisible to civilians but clear as day to any hunters watching. Naruto didn't look away, not once. His grin wasn't boyish mischief tonight, but something steadier, warmer. Inside, the restaurant was all polished marble, soft candlelight, and the quiet hum of violins drifting through the air. Gold-trimmed menus lay waiting at their reserved table, already set by the window with a view of the city lights sparkling like stars fallen to earth. Naruto pulled Rumi's chair out before she could even think to protest. She sat, smoothing her dress as she looked up at him with a small, surprised smile. "You're full of surprises tonight," she said. He grinned, sliding into his seat across from her. "What can I say? I had good teachers." From the far side of the city, Sasuke's voice seemed to echo in his memory, "Don't slouch. Pull out the chair. Don't eat like a barbarian." Sakura's sharper one followed, "And for the love of all things holy, don't talk with your mouth full." Rumi laughed softly, catching the flicker of nerves in his eyes. "Sophisticated and polite. I'm impressed, Naruto." His grin widened. "Don't get used to it. I'm still ordering dessert first." She shook her head, but her laugh lingered, soft and warm, as the waiter approached to take their order. The waiter set their plates down, Naruto with a perfectly grilled steak, the edges seared crisp, the center still pink, Rumi with a delicate plate of salmon over herbs, the glaze catching the candlelight. For a while they just ate, the violin music carrying across the restaurant, the soft murmur of other diners making their table feel more private than it was. Naruto tried not to inhale his food the way he usually would, remembering Sasuke's "don't eat like a barbarian" lecture. Rumi noticed and hid a small laugh behind her glass of water. Halfway through, she set her fork down, cheeks warming. She cut a small piece of her salmon, steadying her hand before holding it out across the table. "Here, try it." Naruto blinked, caught off guard, then leaned forward without hesitation. He took the bite, savoring it a little longer than he needed just because of the way she was watching him. He swallowed, grinned wide, and nodded. "That's really good. Way better than I thought fish could taste." Her blush deepened, but her smile softened. She didn't care about the food. It was the way he smiled after, like she'd just given him something rare. Naruto, still grinning, sliced off a small piece of his steak and offered it back. "Your turn." So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 8. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author Slygold on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.